In this first stage of our descent, we leave the familiar world of satellite-guided maps and bright horizons. We gather on the deck of a research vessel, suspended over a dark, vertical wilderness that has remained largely invisible to human eyes since the beginning of time. Welcome, traveler. Let the restlessness of the day fade away as we prepare to leave the surface of our world behind. Tonight, we are not traveling across the land or through the stars, but downward, into a place that holds the weight of the entire ocean. Imagine yourself standing on the deck of a quiet research vessel, the Okeanos Explorer, as it drifts slowly over the Philippine Sea. The sun has long since set, leaving the water as black and polished as obsidian. There is no wind, only the gentle, rhythmic hum of the ship's engines and the soft lap of water against the steel hull. Take a slow, deep breath and feel the vast, cool air of the open Pacific. Around us, the world feels complete, yet it is an illusion. On the bridge of the ship, glowing blue monitors display a digital grid of the ocean floor, stitched together from satellite data and historical soundings. To the casual eye, the map looks solved, a landscape of ridges and plains painted in shades of artificial cobalt. But as we look closer at the area directly beneath our keel, the grid begins to soften and blur. We are floating above the Mariana Trench, a crescent-shaped scar on the Earth's crust that is more than 1,500 miles long. Here, the resolution of our knowledge begins to fail, and the map becomes a series of educated guesses. We move to the side of the ship and look over the railing into the water. A single floodlight from the deck cuts a bright turquoise cone into the depths, illuminating a swirling cloud of tiny silverfish and drifting plankton. Beyond that narrow beam, the ocean is an absolute, impenetrable black. It is a terrifying and beautiful sight, a vertical horizon that leads toward a world more alien than the surface of any moon. We are not just looking at deep water. We are looking at the entrance to the Hadal Zone, a place named after the Greek underworld. The surface map is a thin skin, and beneath it lies the true, unwritten history of our planet. A technician near the winch releases a heavy, titanium-encased hydrophone, letting it sink slowly into the dark on a thin, high-tension cable. We watch the spool spin with a soft, rhythmic whir, a sound that marks our first tentative reach into the abyss. The cable disappears into the blackness, a single thread of human curiosity descending into a place where the sun's rays have not touched in millions of years. As the hydrophone sinks past the first 100 meters, the light from the ship begins to fade, turning from turquoise to indigo, and finally to a deep, bruised violet. We are leaving the world of photosynthesis and entering the world of shadow. The sonar operator on the bridge points to a sharp, jagged V-shape appearing on his screen, the walls of the trench itself. If you could drain the water from this place, you would see a canyon so immense it would make the Grand Canyon look like a narrow crack in the earth. If you were to take Mount Everest and drop it into the deepest part of this trench, its peak would still be buried under more than a mile of water. This scale is difficult for the human mind to grasp. It is a landscape of inverted mountains and lightless valleys, a place where the geography is measured in miles of vertical darkness rather than horizontal distance. As we descend in our imagination, we pass through the twilight zone, a realm between 200 and 1,000 meters deep. Here, the last faint traces of blue light linger like a ghostly memory of the sun. Strange, silver-skinned fish with enormous upward-pointing eyes drift through the water, their bodies designed to catch the silhouettes of prey against the dim glow above. The water is cooler here, and the pressure begins its slow, relentless build. We are no longer in the world of the surface. We are in a transitional space, a liquid hallway that leads away from the map and toward the great, silent mystery of the deep. We look back up toward the surface, and the ship's hull is now just a dark, distant shadow against a faint violet ceiling. The rhythmic hum of the engines has been replaced by a deep, pressurized silence that seems to press against our ears. Every meter we sink adds more weight to the world above us, a physical presence that we can almost feel in the stillness of the water. We are crossing a threshold where the laws of the surface world no longer apply. The air we breathe, the light we see, and the maps we draw are all becoming distant, irrelevant concepts as the ocean closes in around us. Further down, at 1,000 meters, we enter the midnight zone. Here, the sun's influence ends completely, and the water becomes a uniform, frigid black. The only light here is biological, flickering, rhythmic pulses of blue and green from creatures that carry their own lanterns through the dark. A transparent jellyfish drifts past, its bell glowing with a soft, internal fire that illuminates the water for a brief, magical second. The darkness is not empty. It is a crowded, busy world of life that has never seen a sunbeam. We are travelers in a realm that has remained unchanged for eons, a place where time is measured by the slow falling of marine snow. The ship's bathymetric chart now shows the seafloor falling away into a steep, narrow chasm. This is the inner trench, the place where the Pacific plate is being forced beneath the Philippine plate in a slow, tectonic struggle. The walls of the trench are made of ancient basalt and serpentine, rock that has been crushed and warped by the immense forces of the Earth's interior. We are approaching the edge of the true abyss, a place where the pressure will soon become the defining law of existence. The map on the bridge is now a useless ghost, a digital phantom that cannot describe the weight and the mystery of the water surrounding us. We pause our descent for a moment at the edge of the Hadal Zone, suspended 6,000 meters below the waves. Looking down, the trench appears as a dark, inviting void, a place where the pressure is already more than 600 times that of the surface. We can see the faint, rhythmic twinkling of bioluminescence far below, like stars in an underwater galaxy. It is a place of profound and terrifying beauty, a hidden world that has waited for us to leave our maps behind and enter its dark embrace. The journey has only just begun, and the greatest mysteries are still waiting in the black water miles below. As the last light from our imagination fades, we prepare to feel the true weight of the abyss. The water around us is heavy, cold, and ancient, a liquid atmosphere that holds the secrets of the planet's deepest geological engines. We move forward now, leaving the safety of the surface ship and the digital grid behind, ready to experience the crushing reality of the deep. The trench is calling, a low-frequency hum that vibrates in the water and in the soul. We are sinking into the unknown, a slow and gentle descent into the heart of the deepest place on Earth. Chapter 2: The Architecture of Pressure. As we leave the 6,000-meter mark, we move beyond the limits of sunlight and into a realm where the very physics of life are rewritten. In this chapter, we explore the immense, invisible weight of the ocean, a structural force that shapes every creature and every moment in the deepest part of our world. We have crossed the threshold of the midnight zone and now hover at the edge of the Hadal abyss, where the darkness is absolute and the temperature hovers just above freezing. The transition from distance to weight begins here. We are no longer merely traveling through space, but through a rising tide of physical presence. Imagine the ocean not as a liquid, but as a series of heavy, transparent blankets being stacked one by one upon your shoulders. At this depth, The water is so dense and so heavily packed by the miles above that it feels less like a fluid and more like a solid, unyielding architecture that holds the Earth's deepest secrets in a crushing embrace. To understand the scale of this weight, one must look up through the mind's eye at the miles of water we have already passed. If we were to stack the tallest skyscrapers of the world, the Burj Khalifa, the Empire State Building, the Eiffel Tower, one on top of the other, they would still be dwarfed by the vertical column of water pressing down upon us. Every square inch of our submersible's titanium hull is currently supporting the weight of a heavy SUV. This is the architecture of pressure, a world where the primary environmental factor is not light nor oxygen, but the sheer, relentless mass of the planet's oceans pushing inward from every possible direction. There is a profound difference between the emptiness of outer space and the density of the Mariana Trench. Space is a vacuum, a void that pulls at the body, demanding that the internal pressure of a human life expand outward. But the trench is the opposite. It is a giant, invisible fist that pushes. It is a world of total presence, where every cubic centimeter of space is filled with a force that seeks to minimize volume. In the vacuum of the stars, you are a point of expansion in a lonely void, but 7 miles down, you are a point of resistance in a world that is heavy, crowded, and entirely focused on the act of compression. We look through the thick, conical porthole of our descent capsule, a window made of reinforced acrylic and quartz nearly a foot thick. As we sink deeper, the hull begins to emit a series of low-frequency groans and sharp, metallic pings. These sounds are not signs of failure, but of the vessel's slow, rhythmic adjustment to the rising pressure. The titanium sphere is actually shrinking, its microscopic pores being squeezed shut as the metal molecules are forced closer together. You can place your hand against the inner wall and feel a slight, vibrating warmth. The kinetic energy of the metal being compressed by the weight of the Pacific Ocean. At this depth, the very chemistry of water begins to change under the architectural load. Water is often called incompressible, but at 11,000 meters, that is only a half-truth. The pressure is so immense that the water molecules themselves are packed 5% tighter than they are at the surface. If you were to release this pressure instantly, the ocean level across the entire planet would rise by nearly 100 feet. This compressed water is more viscous, moving with a slow, heavy resistance against the submersible's lights. It feels like a thick, cold syrup, a medium that carries sound and vibration with a clarity and speed that the surface world can never know. Consider a simple, hollow object, a styrofoam cup or a light wooden box, lowered on a cable into this abyss. As it passes the 3,000-meter mark, the air pockets within the material are pulverized, the structure collapsing into a tiny, dense pebble of its former self. By the time it reaches the floor of the trench, a standard drinking cup would be no larger than a thimble, its molecular structure reorganized into a hard, shrunken relic. This is the reality of the Hadal Zone. It is a place that punishes the hollow and the empty. To survive here, a thing must be either solid, fluid-filled, or built of the pressure itself. The biology of this world is a masterpiece of structural adaptation, a quiet victory of soft tissue over hard force. A fish from the surface possesses a swim bladder, a pocket of gas used to control buoyancy. But in the trench, such a feature would be a lethal liability, a point of immediate collapse. Instead, the creatures here have abandoned the hollow. Their bodies are made of fluids and gels that are as incompressible as the ocean surrounding them. They are like a sponge soaked in water. Because they are full of the same pressure that pushes against them, they are not crushed. They exist in a state of perfect, weightless equilibrium within the crushing dark. As we continue our slow, rhythmic descent, we pass a deep-sea cable, a thin, armored line that carries the digital whispers of continents across the seafloor. The cable is coated in a layer of dense polyethylene and wrapped in steel wire, yet even this industrial armor must respect the laws of the deep. The pressure forces the insulation to grip the inner copper so tightly that they become a single, solid unit. We watch the cable disappear into the darkness below, a silent human artifact that has become part of the trench's architecture. It is a reminder that even our most advanced technology must submit to the heavy logic of the water. The sensation of weight in this darkness is almost psychological. Even though we are protected by the titanium sphere, the mind begins to feel the presence of the 7 miles of water above us. It is a heavy, velvet silence that feels as though it is leaning against the hull. Every movement of the submersible feels sluggish, a slow dance through a medium that is increasingly resistant to change. The floodlights struggle to pierce the density, the beams looking like solid tunnels of white light in a world of charcoal and indigo. We are moving through the foundation of the world, where the gravity of the ocean has become a physical wall. In the final stages of the descent toward the 10,000-meter mark, the pressure reaches a point where it can warp the very proteins that sustain life. In the surface world, enzymes are flexible, changing shape to facilitate the chemical reactions of the body. But here, the pressure locks those proteins into rigid, useless forms. To combat this, the few creatures that live this deep have evolved special chemical stabilizers, molecules that act like microscopic scaffolding to hold their cells open against the weight. They are biologically propped up, their very existence dependent on a chemistry that can withstand the architectural load of the planet's deepest scar. We settle into a rhythmic, steady fall, our eyes fixed on the depth gauge as the numbers slowly climb toward the ultimate limit. The ship above is now a dream of air and light, a fragile memory that feels light years away. The only reality is the creaking of the titanium, the steady hum of the oxygen scrubbers, and the immense, invisible presence of the water. We are sinking into the foundation of the Earth, moving toward a place where the pressure creates a silence so thick you can almost touch it. The architecture of the deep is all around us now, a silent cathedral built of weight and time. The descent continues, carrying us deeper into a world where the crushing weight is matched only by the mystery of the sounds that move through it. We have felt the pressure, and now we must listen to what it carries. The ocean is not just heavy. It is a vast liquid ear, catching the echoes of earthquakes and the calls of creatures we have yet to name. As we prepare to enter the deep sound channel, the creaking of our vessel slows, and we turn our attention to the haunting, metallic songs of the abyss. The architecture of pressure is the stage, and the music of the deep is about to begin. Chapter 3. The Trench is Not Silent. While we often imagine the abyss as a tomb of absolute stillness, the reality revealed by our instruments is far more restless. In this chapter, we enter the deep sound channel, lowering our microphones into a dark, planetary echo chamber, where the songs of whales and the groans of the Earth itself travel for thousands of miles. The titanium-encased hydrophone continues its slow, rhythmic descent, tethered to the surface ship by a mile-long cable of reinforced fiber optics. We sit in the darkened control room of the Okeanos Explorer, the only light coming from the soft amber glow of the spectral analyzers. On the screens, a flat line suddenly begins to dance with delicate, rhythmic pulses, catching the first tremors of a world we cannot see. We put on our headphones, and the silence of the ship is replaced by a deep, pressurized hum. The sound of the ocean breathing. It is a heavy, textured noise, like the distant roar of a forest fire heard through a thick stone wall. We are now passing through the Sofar Channel, a unique layer of the ocean where temperature and pressure create a natural acoustic hallway. In this narrow band of water, sound waves are trapped, bouncing back and forth in a rhythmic horizontal glide that allows them to travel across entire ocean basins without losing their strength. A sound made in the waters off Antarctica can be heard here, in the Mariana Trench, thousands of miles to the north. It is a global library of echoes, a place where the ocean remembers every vibration it has ever held. We listen as the hydrophone drifts through this invisible gallery of sound, catching the ghosts of distant storms. A low, rhythmic grinding begins to vibrate through our headphones, a sound so deep it feels like a physical weight in the chest. This is the voice of the trench itself, the tectonic plates of the Earth's crust slowly scraping against one another. The Pacific Plate is a massive, cold slab of basalt, and as it is forced downward, it groans with the effort of 1 billion tons of rock being crushed. The sound is not sharp. It is a slow, agonizing rumble that lasts for several minutes, a geological sigh that vibrates through the dark water. We are listening to the very process that carved this chasm, the slow-motion collision of worlds. Suddenly, a rhythmic, mechanical thrumming cuts through the tectonic groan, the distant, haunting pulse of a supertanker's propellers. Even though the ship is miles above us and perhaps 50 miles to the east, its presence is felt here as a constant, low-frequency heartbeat. The sound is distorted by the depth, turning the sharp clatter of machinery into a soft, ghostly whump-whump-whump that echoes off the trench walls. It is a reminder that the surface world is never truly gone. Its industrial shadows reach down into the abyss, their rhythmic noise becoming a permanent part of the deep-sea environment. Among the mechanical shadows, a new sound emerges, a bizarre five-part call that lasts just over 3 seconds. It begins with a deep, metallic groan like a rusted gate opening, then suddenly leaps into a high-pitched electric twang. This is the Western Pacific Biotwang, a mystery that puzzled researchers for years. The sound is so rhythmic and so strange that it seems almost manufactured, like a stray signal from a submerged satellite. We watch the spectral analyzer as the twang creates a sharp, vertical spike on the screen. While scientists now suspect it belongs to a minke whale, the sound remains alien, a rhythmic puzzle echoing in the black. The hydrophone then catches a series of low, haunting melodies, the songs of blue whales and humpbacks traveling from thousands of miles away. In the deep sound channel, these songs lose their crispness and become ethereal, echoing through the water like a choir in a vast, dark cathedral. The rhythms are complex and slow, a language of moans and whistles that carries the history of the pods. We listen to a single humpback's call, a lonely, rising note that vibrates through the hydrophone for several seconds before fading into the background hum of the abyss. The trench is a sanctuary for these voices, a place where the songs of the surface can endure. Far below us, a sudden explosive boom shudders through the water, followed by a long, rhythmic hissing. This is the sound of an underwater volcanic vent erupting somewhere along the trench's ridge. The heat from the Earth's interior is forcing mineral-rich water through the crust, and as it hits the freezing ocean, the rock shatters with a crystalline violence. The hissing is the sound of 1,000 tiny collapses, a rhythmic shush that sounds like a distant rainstorm on a tin roof. We are listening to the birth of new seafloor, a violent and beautiful chemistry that takes place in total darkness. In the gaps between the geological and biological sounds, there is a rhythmic, high-pitched ping from a distant sonar array. It is a cold, clinical sound, a sharp needle of noise that probes the darkness for hidden ridges or silent submarines. The ping repeats every 10 seconds with a terrifying mechanical precision, its echo bouncing off the limestone walls of the trench until it dissipates into the silt. This is the sound of human curiosity and human conflict, a rhythmic intrusion into the ancient quiet of the Hadal Zone. We feel the sharp vibration of each pulse against the hydrophone, a reminder of the eyes that are always watching. The hydrophone then records a series of unidentified metallic clanks, a sound that has haunted deep-sea researchers for decades. It is a sharp, rhythmic noise, like a heavy chain being dragged across a steel plate. Some believe it is the sound of old shipwrecks settling into the mud, their hulls buckling under the pressure as they slide deeper into the chasm. Others suspect it is the movement of hydrothermal chimneys collapsing as they grow too heavy. The sound is unsettling in its clarity, a rhythmic interruption that suggests something heavy and artificial is moving in the dark, miles below the reach of any light. As the descent continues, the baseline noise of the ocean begins to thicken, becoming a dense, pressurized atmosphere of sound. The weight of the water above is so great that every vibration is amplified, turning the smallest movement into a profound acoustic event. We hear the rhythmic click-click-click of a sperm whale's echolocation, a sharp, wooden sound like a stick being run along a fence. The whale is diving, its sonar pulses becoming faster and more urgent as it searches for giant squid in the twilight. The sound is a rhythmic map, a way of seeing with noise in a world where eyes are useless. The hydrophone is now at 7,000 meters, and the sounds of the surface have become faint, ghostly whispers. The dominant noise here is the slow, rhythmic thrum of the trench's own internal currents, a movement of water that is as heavy as liquid lead. We are listening to the heart of the abyss, a place where the Earth's energy is converted into a low, vibrating music. The sounds are slow, patient, and ancient, a rhythmic reminder that the trench is a living, breathing part of the planet. We sit in the silence of the ship, our ears filled with the deep, dark symphony of the Mariana. The hydrophone cable is finally locked, and the recordings are saved as a digital ghost of the descent. We have listened to the groans of the plates, the metallic twangs of the whales, and the sharp pings of the sonar, and now we prepare to follow these sounds down with our own eyes. The acoustic mystery of the trench has set the stage for the first human explorers, who would descend into this noisy darkness to see what lay at the very bottom. We turn off the analyzers, the silence returning to the room, as we move forward through the history toward the first time a human light touched the pale silt. Chapter 4, The First Human Descent. In this chapter, we step into the year 1960, joining two men as they climb into a tiny steel sphere to attempt the impossible. We will experience the slow, claustrophobic descent of the Trieste, the terrifying sound of a window cracking 7 miles down, and the enduring mystery of a creature that should not have been there. The year is 1960, and the morning air above the Mariana Trench is gray and heavy with salt spray. The USS Lewis rocks gently in the long Pacific swells, its deck crowded with scientists and sailors watching a strange, ungainly craft bobbing in the water alongside. This is the Trieste, a bathyscaphe designed by Swiss explorer Auguste Piccard. It looks like a massive white-painted balloon made of steel, but instead of air, its vast float is filled with lighter-than-water gasoline. Hanging beneath this giant float is a tiny, thick-walled steel sphere, barely large enough for two people to sit shoulder to shoulder. This is the only part of the vessel that will protect its crew from the crushing architecture of the deep. Jacques Picard and Don Walsh climb through the narrow hatch of the sphere, their movements slow and deliberate in the cramped space. Inside, the walls are lined with dials, switches, and a single, thick conical porthole made of reinforced plexiglass. The air smells of cold metal, ozone, and the rhythmic hiss of the oxygen scrubbers. With a heavy metallic clunk, the hatch is bolted shut from the outside, sealing them into a world of their own. They share a quiet look of focused determination as the ballast tanks are flooded, and the Trieste begins to slip beneath the surface, leaving the light of the morning behind for a world that has never known a sunbeam. The descent is a slow, rhythmic fall through the cooling layers of the Pacific. At first, the porthole is filled with a brilliant, sun-drenched turquoise, but within minutes, it deepens into a rich, royal blue. By the time they reach 1,000 meters, the blue has faded into a bruised charcoal, and then into an absolute velvety black. The only movement is the steady, rhythmic climb of the depth gauge and the soft hum of the internal electronics. Picard and Walsh sit in the darkness, their knees tucked toward their chests, watching the numbers flicker as they pass the height of the Alps, then the height of the Himalayas, sinking deeper into the unknown. At 30,000 feet, nearly 9,000 meters, the silence is shattered by a violent explosive bang that shudders through the entire steel sphere. The sound is so loud and so sharp that it feels like a physical blow to the ears. Picard and Walsh freeze, their eyes darting to the instrument panels, searching for the sign of a leak or a sudden drop in pressure. The sphere remains dry, but they soon discover the source. The outer plexiglass window of the entry tunnel has succumbed to the immense weight, developing a long, jagged crack. They are suspended 7 miles beneath the sun, and the very window they must pass through to exit has begun to surrender to the abyss. Despite the terrifying sound, the two men make a quiet, monumental decision. They will continue. They trust that the inner steel sphere, forged to withstand the weight of the world, will hold against the pressure. The Trieste continues its rhythmic, silent fall, passing the 35,000-foot mark as it approaches the floor of the Challenger Deep. The pale, white lights of the submersible are switched on, casting a narrow, weak cone of illumination into a darkness that is millions of years old. Every few seconds, the rhythmic whir of the sonar tells them they are closing in on the absolute bottom of the world. A soft, white cloud of silt begins to rise from the seafloor as the Trieste finally settles into the mud. The impact is gentle, a rhythmic thud that marks the first time human beings have ever touched the deepest point on Earth. Outside the porthole, the water is clear and still, and the seafloor is a flat, featureless expanse of cream-colored silt. They have arrived at 10,911 meters deep. For a few moments, Picard and Walsh sit in absolute silence, overwhelmed by the profound isolation of their position. They are the only points of light in a dark, cold eternity, 7 miles removed from the nearest human voice. As the silt begins to settle, Picard leans toward the porthole and sees a movement in the white light. There, resting on the pale mud, is a creature. He describes it as a flatfish, about a foot long and looking remarkably like a sole or a flounder, with 2 eyes positioned on top of its head. The fish appears to look at the bright, unnatural light of the Trieste for a brief second before it ripples its body and swims slowly away into the darkness. To Picard and Walsh, it is a revelation, a vertebrate animal with bones and eyes. thriving under a pressure that science said should have turned it into a slurry. This phantom flatfish has become one of the greatest mysteries in deep-sea history. In the decades since the 1960 dive, no other mission, not even the most advanced robotic probes, has ever seen a vertebrate fish at that absolute depth. Modern scientists suggest that the men might have seen a sea cucumber, a soft-bodied invertebrate that can sometimes mimic the shape of a fish. Yet Picard, an experienced observer of the deep, never wavered in his belief. The flatfish remains a ghostly anomaly, a witness to a secret that the trench has perhaps decided to hide from all those who followed. The two men spend only 20 minutes on the bottom, their breath forming rhythmic clouds in the freezing air of the sphere. The temperature inside has dropped to just a few degrees above freezing, and the walls are slick with condensation. They take a few photographs of the pale silt and the dark horizon, knowing that every second spent at this depth is a gamble with the structural limits of the metal. With a rhythmic flick of a switch, Picard releases the magnetic ballast, tons of small steel shot that fall away into the mud, and the Trieste begins its slow, triumphant ascent toward the surface. The trip back up is a long, rhythmic journey from the black to the blue. As they pass through the different layers of the ocean, the pressure slowly begins to lift from the titanium hull, and the sharp pings of the metal cooling can be heard. They watch as the charcoal water turns to indigo, then to a pale, welcoming turquoise. When the Trieste finally breaks the surface, the bright, blinding light of the Pacific afternoon floods through the porthole. They have returned from the underworld, carrying with them the memory of the cream-colored silt and the phantom fish that watched them from the dark. The Trieste would never dive this deep again, its mission a singular historic achievement that proved humans could reach the untouchable. The cracked window remained a silent trophy of the pressure they had endured, a reminder of how close they had come to the edge. We leave the year 1960 now, the ship and its sphere fading into the mist of history, as we prepare for the next lone voyager, who would return to this spot 50 years later. The deep floor is once again silent, waiting for the light of the deep-sea Challenger to reveal the secrets that the Trieste left behind. Chapter 5. The Second Descent and the Plastic Ghost. 50 years after the Trieste, a new kind of explorer returned to the Challenger deep, seeking to look upon the absolute bottom with modern eyes. In this chapter, we follow James Cameron's solitary journey into the dark and witness the unsettling realization that even the world's deepest scar is no longer untouched by human hands. The year is 2012, and the surface of the Pacific is restless, a churning field of gray and white foam under a heavy sky. A vibrant, lime-green vessel stands vertically in the water, looking less like a submarine and more like a sleek 24-foot torpedo. This is the Deep-Sea Challenger, a masterpiece of modern engineering built from a specialized syntactic foam that provides both buoyancy and the strength of stone. At its base sits a tiny, thick-walled steel pilot sphere, just 43 inches wide. We watch as the last hatch is bolted shut and the green torpedo slips beneath the waves, beginning a fast, silent fall toward a destination that has seen only 2 human visitors in all of history. Inside the sphere, the space is so cramped that James Cameron must sit in a near-fetal position, his knees tucked toward his chest and his head pressed against the curve of the hull. He is encased in a world of humming electronics and glowing touchscreens, a solitary traveler in a cockpit of steel and glass. The air is cool, smelling of recycled oxygen and the faint, metallic aroma of the internal systems. As the submersible falls at a rate of 500 feet per minute, The light in the porthole vanishes with a terrifying speed, shifting from a bright tropical blue to a deep bruised indigo, and finally into the total blackness of the midnight zone. Cameron describes the experience not as a descent, but as a journey into a profound and absolute solitude. He is, in this moment, the most isolated human being on the planet, more removed from his kind than an astronaut walking on the moon. The only sound is the rhythmic hiss of his own breathing and the steady, quiet hum of the thrusters. Through the small, thick porthole, he watches the depth gauge climb past the wreck of the Bismarck, past the height of the grandest mountains, until the world above feels like a distant, impossible dream. He is a single point of light in a dark, cold eternity that seems to stretch on forever. The internal temperature of the sphere begins to drop rapidly, the cold of the deep water seeping through the steel walls. Big drops of condensation form on the inner hull, a rhythmic drip-drip that sounds loud in the heavy silence. His feet, pressed against the cold hatch, are freezing, yet he remains focused on the monitors, watching for the first glint of the seafloor. He is descending through a realm that has never known the sun, a place where the weight of the water above is now equivalent to the weight of 1,000 elephants pressing against every square inch of his capsule. The pressure is a silent, invisible presence, leaning against the glass. The descent has taken over 2.5 hours when the first pale white silt finally appears in the cone of the submersible's powerful floodlights. Cameron nudges the thrusters, and the deep-sea Challenger settles gently onto the seafloor, its foot sinking a few inches into the mud. A cloud of the finest silt imaginable rises in silken tendrils, hanging in the water like stationary cigarette smoke. He looks out at a world that he will later describe as lunar, a vast, desolate, and featureless plain of pale cream mud that stretches away into the darkness. There are no jagged rocks here, no coral reefs, only a profound and ancient stillness. As he begins to move across the seafloor, his high-resolution cameras capturing the first 3D images of the abyss, the solitude of the place feels physical. He is 7 miles down, in a world that is utterly indifferent to his survival. There is a sense of presence here, a quiet weight of a landscape that was not meant for human eyes. He watches for life, but the floor appears empty and barren, a liquid desert where time itself seems to have slowed to a halt. The silt beneath his thrusters is the accumulated dust of eons, a soft, white burial shroud for a planet that has remained hidden since the beginning. But the most unsettling discovery of this modern era of exploration was not a new species or a hidden volcano. In a later return to this absolute bottom, a simpler and more terrifying object appeared in the cone of the lights. Resting on the pale, untouched silt, 7 miles beneath the reach of the sun, was a plastic bag. It sat motionless, a synthetic ghost in a world that should have been pristine. It was a casual, immortal signature of the world above, a piece of trash that had simply drifted down through the darkness for weeks, arriving at the bottom of the world long before our most advanced machines could. The sight of the plastic ghost is a quiet, haunting revelation. It shows us that there are no more truly untouched spaces on our map. The shadows of our industry have reached the deepest scar on the planet before our curiosity ever could. The bag rests there as a silent witness to a humanity that is both powerful and careless, a synthetic monument in a world of ancient silt. It is a reminder that the trench is not a separate world, but a part of our own, a final dark destination for the things we throw away and forget. The lunar landscape is no longer just a mystery, it is a mirror. Cameron spends 3 hours on the bottom, his movements a slow and deliberate dance through the dark. He collects samples of the pale mud and records the silence, his mind filled with the weight of the solitude. Every few minutes he hears a faint, ghostly voice from the ship 7 miles above, a comms check that sounds eerily clear in the quiet of the sphere. It is his only connection to the world of air and light, a thin thread of human sound in a dark, silent eternity. He is a voyager at the edge of the world, staring into a blackness that seems to swallow the light of his lamps. The ascent is a fast, vertical rush toward the surface, the deep-sea Challenger shedding its weights and rising like a green bubble. He watches as the darkness turns to a bruised indigo, then a pale, welcoming violet, and finally the brilliant, blinding turquoise of the Pacific afternoon. When he breaks the surface, the ship's crew is waiting, their cheers a distant sound against the heavy memory of the deep silence. He has returned from the Challenger deep, but he carries with him the image of the lunar desert and the unsettling realization of the plastic ghost waiting in the dark. We leave the era of human voyagers now, the torpedo-shaped submersibles returning to their hangars, as we turn our attention to the forces that actually built this abyss. The silence of the seafloor is not just a place of rest. It is the site of a colossal, slow-motion struggle between the plates of the Earth itself. We prepare now to enter the geological heart of the trench, to see the black smokers and the chemical fires that fuel life in a world without sun. The descent continues, moving from the history of explorers into the deep, grinding reality of the planet's interior. Chapter 6: The Geological Engine of the Abyss. Beyond the adventures of human voyagers lies the true power of the trench, a massive, slow-motion engine where the Earth's crust is recycled into the mantle. In this chapter, we observe the grinding of tectonic plates, the birth of deep earthquakes, and the surreal chemistry of vents that breathe liquid carbon dioxide into the freezing dark. The research ship Okeanos remains stationary above the dark Pacific, its sonar pings sending a rhythmic, invisible pulse deep into the Earth's crust. On the digital screens in the hull, we see a jagged, blue-shadowed map of the seafloor, a place where two of the world's great tectonic plates are locked in a slow, colossal struggle. To our left lies the Philippine Plate, a younger and lighter slab of the world's crust. To our right, the massive, ancient Pacific Plate is advancing at the speed of a fingernail's growth. We are floating above a subduction zone, a geological conveyor belt where the very surface of our planet is being pulled downward into the white-hot fires of the interior. Imagine the scale of this collision, a movement so slow it is measured in centuries, yet so powerful it has carved the deepest scar on Earth. The Pacific Plate, heavy and cold from millions of years at the bottom of the sea, does not simply hit the Philippine Plate, it dives beneath it. As the leading edge of this massive slab of basalt is forced downward, it bends and fractures, dragging the edge of the overlying plate with it. This downward curve is what creates the V-shaped chasm of the Mariana Trench. It is a place of constant, rhythmic tension, a landscape shaped by the weight of continents being swallowed by the deep. The grinding of these two plates is not a smooth or silent process, but a series of violent staccato ruptures that vibrate through the water. Deep within the walls of the trench, miles below the silt, the rock is under such immense pressure that it begins to groan with a low, rhythmic frequency. Every few decades, a section of the plate that has been stuck finally snaps, releasing a burst of energy that sends a shudder across the ocean floor. These are the deep focus earthquakes, tremors that originate hundreds of miles beneath the seabed. We feel the echo of one now, a soft, rhythmic vibration in our submersible's hull, a reminder that the Earth is alive and moving. As we descend toward a hydrothermal field known as the Champagne Vents, the water begins to shimmer with a strange, oily texture. The submersible's floodlights illuminate a field of jagged, white rock chimneys, looking like a forest of frozen, skeletal fingers reaching up from the mud. From the cracks at the base of these towers, tiny, translucent bubbles begin to rise in a steady, rhythmic stream. These are not air bubbles. They are pure, liquid carbon dioxide. At this extreme pressure and freezing temperature, the gas we exhale becomes a shimmering liquid, dancing upward through the water like a string of pale, rhythmic pearls. The sight of the liquid carbon dioxide is surreal, a glimpse into a world where the laws of chemistry have been rewritten by the weight of the abyss. The bubbles catch the white light of our lamps, glowing with a soft, pearlescent luster as they wobble and merge in the cold currents. They do not pop or vanish. They drift upward until the pressure lessens, eventually turning back into gas miles above our heads. The vents smell faintly of sulfur and cold stone, a dry, chemical aroma that penetrates the submersible's external sensors. It is a place of quiet, rhythmic eruption, where the Earth's internal chemistry leaks into the sea in a beautiful, alien display. Further along the trench ridge, the atmosphere shifts from the cold shimmer of the pearls to a dark, violent energy. We approach a field of black smokers, massive mineral chimneys that stand nearly 50 feet tall in the absolute dark. From the tops of these Gothic towers, a thick, sooty plume of what looks like black smoke erupts into the water in a frantic, rhythmic swirl. This is not smoke, but superheated water, reaching temperatures of over 700 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead. Yet, because of the crushing pressure of the trench, the water cannot boil. It remains a liquid, a toxic, mineral-rich soup blasting into the freezing sea. The black smoker chimneys are built from the very minerals they breathe: gold, silver, zinc, and copper that solidify instantly when the hot fluid hits the cold water. The sound of the eruption is a constant, rhythmic shush, a pressurized hiss that vibrates through the submersible's frame. We watch as a new layer of dark mineral dust settles on the rim of a chimney, the tower growing an inch taller even as we watch. It is a landscape of rapid, violent growth, a place where the Earth's raw materials are being forged into solid towers in the lightless deep. The water around the smokers is a chaotic swirl of gray and black, a shimmering mineral storm. The heat from these vents creates a localized, rhythmic pulsing in the water, a shimmering distortion that makes the stone walls look as though they were breathing. This superheated fluid is rich in hydrogen sulfide and methane, chemicals that would be lethal to almost any life on the surface. But here, in the heart of the geological engine, these toxins are the foundation of a secret world. The black smokers are the hearths of the abyss, providing warmth and chemical energy in a place where the sun is only a distant myth. We watch the dark plumes rise until they vanish into the black, a rhythmic offering from the mantle to the ocean. As we move away from the smokers, we see the white, crusty remains of older chimneys that have long since gone cold. They stand like ruins of an ancient, sunken city, their surfaces covered in a fine dusting of marine snow. These ghost chimneys are no longer breathing, their internal plumbing choked by the very minerals they once carried. The silence here is profound, a rhythmic contrast to the hissing energy of the active vents. The seafloor is a graveyard of geological cycles, a place where the Earth builds and destroys its own architecture over millions of quiet years. Every tower tells the story of a tremor, an eruption, and a slow, cold end. Beneath our submersible, the silt begins to thin, revealing the raw, dark basalt of the Pacific Plate, as it prepares for its final dive. The rock is scarred with deep, rhythmic grooves, the track marks of its journey toward the mantle. This is the ultimate destination of the geological engine, the place where the seafloor is dragged into the heat of the interior to be melted and eventually reborn as volcanic ash or new crust. We feel a sense of immense, slow-motion gravity here, a pull that has guided the movement of the continents for eons. The trench is not just a hole, it is a gateway, a point of transition between the surface and the deep fire. The light of our submersible begins to fade as we pull back from the ridge, the black smokers disappearing into the dark like guttering candles. The rhythmic hissing of the vents is replaced by the deep, pressurized silence of the open trench. We have seen the machinery of the planet, the grinding plates, the pearlescent bubbles of liquid gas, and the soot-black towers of mineral fire. The geological engine has set the stage for a much stranger story, providing the heat and the chemicals for a biology that defies every law of the sun. We turn our gaze now toward the creatures that call these toxic fires home, the alchemists of the abyss. As we move toward the next layer of the deep, the water grows colder once more, but the memory of the black smokers lingers in the dark. The minerals they breathe will eventually find their way into the bodies of the creatures we are about to meet. A chemical inheritance from the Earth's core. The story of the trench is moving from the cold stone to the living flesh, from the engine to the life it sustains. The descent continues, a slow and rhythmic journey through the darkness toward a world where the rules of life are written in sulfur and heat. The smokers continue their silent work behind us, breathing their dark, mineral clouds into the eternal night. Chapter 7. The Alchemists of the Abyss. In the previous chapter, we observed the raw, volcanic power of the Earth's interior. Now, we move closer to those hissing mineral towers to find a biological miracle, a world where life has abandoned the sun entirely, choosing instead to brew its existence from the toxic chemicals of the deep. The submersible glides away from the barren mud plains and toward a towering structure that looms in our floodlights like a jagged, Gothic spire. This is a black smoker, a mineral chimney pulsing with an internal heat that defies the freezing dark of the trench. As we approach, the water begins to shimmer and ripple, distorted by the intense thermal energy. We expect to see a wasteland, but as our lights settle on the chimney's surface, we see a world that is teeming, crowded, and vibrantly alive. It is a biological oasis in a desert of darkness, a place where the rules of life have been completely rewritten by the alchemists of the abyss. Clinging to the sides of the chimney are dense forests of giant tube worms, their long, white protective casings looking like a thicket of calcified pipes. From the tops of these tubes, soft, blood-red plumes emerge, swaying rhythmically in the shimmering currents like delicate underwater flowers. These creatures, known as riftia, are a biological paradox. They have no mouths, no stomachs, and no eyes. They do not eat in any way we understand. Instead, they have formed a sacred, rhythmic partnership with the trillions of bacteria living inside their tissues, turning the toxic hydrogen sulfide of the vent into the very fuel of their survival. We move the submersible's camera closer, and the red plumes retract instantly into their white tubes with a soft, rhythmic snap. The color of the plumes comes from a specialized form of hemoglobin, designed to carry both oxygen and lethal sulfur through their bodies. This is the heart of chemosynthesis, a silent, chemical alchemy that replaces the sun's light with the Earth's heat. In this lightless cathedral, life does not wait for a sunbeam. It harvests the dark energy of the crust, weaving living tissue from a poisonous soup of minerals. The water is a chaotic, rhythmic swirl of life and toxins, a simmering cauldron of biological innovation. Scuttling over the mineral-encrusted surface of the chimney are thousands of blind, white crabs, their bodies moving with a frantic, rhythmic energy. These Bythograridae crabs have entirely abandoned the need for sight, their eyes reduced to small, unpigmented nubs that can only sense the dim infrared glow of the superheated water. They use their long, sensitive claws to pick rhythmically at the bacterial mats that cover the rock, living as scavengers in this high-pressure furnace. The sound of their claws clicking against the mineral walls is a constant, staccato percussion, lost in the deeper hiss of the venting fluid. They are the restless ghosts of the chimney, forever prowling the edge of the fire. Near the very top of the smoker, where the black mineral plume is most violent, a swarm of pale, translucent shrimp hovers in the shimmering heat. These shrimp, Rimicaris, possess a unique, rhythmic adaptation, a large wing-shaped organ on their backs that functions as a thermal sensor. They do not see the world in light, but in heat, navigating the narrow space between the 400°C vent fluid and the freezing ocean water. They hover in a dense, pulsing cloud, their rhythmic movements keeping them perfectly balanced on the edge of survival. To them, the black smoker is not a hazard, but a hearth, a source of warmth and life in an infinite, cold void. The density of life here is staggering, a rhythmic contrast to the empty miles of water we passed during our descent. In this small chemical pocket, the biomass is thousands of times greater than on the surrounding seafloor. It is a reminder that life is not a fragile accident, but a stubborn, persistent force that finds a way to flourish even in the most hostile environments. Every square inch of the chimney is covered in something living. Bacteria, snails, limpets, and worms, all participating in a rhythmic chemical economy that has existed for billions of years. The black smoker is a city of the deep, a bustling metropolis built on a foundation of sulfur. As we watch this thriving ecosystem, a quiet, profound question begins to echo in the cabin of our submersible. Could this be where we all began? For generations, we believed that life started in a sun-drenched, primordial soup on the surface, but these dark vents suggest a different, more ancient story. The black smokers are like natural, rhythmic laboratories, providing the perfect conditions for the first complex molecules to assemble. In the microscopic, mineral-rich pores of these chimneys, the transition from chemistry to biology may have first occurred, fueled by the raw, volcanic energy of a young Earth. We are staring at a possible birthplace, a dark cradle of all living things. The theory of the vent origin suggests that the first cells did not need a lightning bolt or a sunbeam. They needed a gradient. Here, the sharp, rhythmic difference between the acidic, superheated vent fluid and the alkaline, cold ocean creates a natural battery, a flow of energy that could have powered the very first metabolic reactions. The mineral walls of the chimneys act as a rhythmic scaffolding, holding the building blocks of life in place until they could form their own membranes. We look at the giant tube worms and the blind crabs not as alien monsters, but as distant cousins who stayed behind in the nursery of the world. There is a sense of immense, slow-motion time in this vent field, a feeling that we are witnessing a process that has remained unchanged since the dawn of the planet. The sun has risen and set billions of times above, continents have collided and split, and mass extinctions have wiped the surface clean. Yet the alchemists of the abyss have continued their rhythmic work. They are protected by the 7 miles of water above them, isolated from the chaos of the atmosphere. The black smokers are a sanctuary of permanence, a place where life remains tethered to the heartbeat of the earth itself, indifferent to the world of light. But this sanctuary is also a place of sudden, rhythmic ends. Hydrothermal vents are not permanent. They are fueled by the shifting of tectonic plates. And when the plumbing beneath the crust changes, the vent turns off. We pass a cluster of dead chimneys, their surfaces cold, gray, and abandoned. The tube worms are now just brittle, empty husks, and the blind crabs have long since moved on or perished. The life here is a rhythmic cycle of boom and bust, a series of temporary oases that appear and disappear over centuries. To survive, the larvae of these creatures must drift through the cold, dark void, searching for the rhythmic pulse of a new fire. The submersible begins to pull back from the vent field, the shimmering heat and the red plumes of the riftia fading into the blackness. The rhythmic hissing of the smoker softens until the deep silence of the trench returns. We have seen the incredible alchemy of the deep, the life that turns poison into energy and darkness into a home. The mystery of our own origins lingers in the water, a quiet, chemical ghost that follows us as we move deeper into the Hadal Zone. We leave the fires of the vents behind, turning our lights toward the broader, ghostly biology of the trench floor. As we move toward the next chapter, the water grows even heavier, and the pressure prepares to test the very structure of life. We are leaving the chemical oases for the vast mud plains, where the creatures of the deep have become soft, transparent, and slow. The alchemists of the vents have shown us how life survives on heat. Now, the ghosts of the Hadal underworld will show us how it survives on pressure. The descent continues, a slow and rhythmic journey through the unknown, moving from the fires of the earth to the crystalline stillness of the absolute deep. Chapter 8. Ghost Biology of the Hadal Zone. We leave the localized heat of the hydrothermal vents behind, descending further into the open, lightless plains of the Hadal Zone. Here, the fires of the earth are a distant memory, replaced by a crystalline stillness where life survives, by becoming soft, transparent, and impossibly patient. The submersible's floodlights pull away from the shimmering chimneys, and the water instantly returns to a uniform, frigid black. The temperature drops back to a steady 2 degrees Celsius, and the silence is so profound it feels like a physical texture against the hull. In the beam of our lamps, we notice a constant, rhythmic falling of tiny white particles, looking like a slow-motion blizzard in a dark forest. This is marine snow, the fragmented remains of plankton, fish scales, and dust that have been drifting downward for weeks. It is the fragile, nutrient-poor lifeline that connects the sunlit world miles above to the starving world of the absolute deep. As we glide over the pale, silty floor of the trench, a shape appears in the periphery of our lights. A creature so delicate it looks like it was fashioned from liquid glass. This is the Mariana snailfish, the undisputed king of the deepest part of our world. It is small, about the length of a human hand, and its body is a pale, translucent pink that reveals the soft organs functioning within. It has no scales, no hard armor, and no sharp teeth. It moves with a slow, rhythmic undulation of its gelatinous fins, looking less like a predator and more like a ghost drifting through a dream. The snailfish is a biological masterpiece, having solved the problem of pressure not by building walls, but by surrendering to it. Its bones are not made of hard calcium, but of flexible, soft cartilage that can bend without snapping under the weight of 16,000 pounds per square inch. Its body is filled with specialized molecules called piezolites, which act like microscopic chemical scaffolding to keep its cells from collapsing. The snailfish is a prisoner of its own brilliance. If we were to bring it to the surface, its body would lose its structural integrity and melt into a soft slurry. It exists only because of the weight of the world. Further along the mud plains, we encounter a creature that seems even more spectral: the telescope octopus. It is almost entirely transparent, a gelatinous phantom floating in the water like a living window. Its body is so clear that the only visible parts are its digestive tract and its two enormous, tubular eyes that point upward toward the unreachable sun. These eyes rotate with a slow, rhythmic precision, scanning the darkness for the faint silhouettes of prey passing above. It moves through the water with a weightless, rhythmic pulsing of its translucent mantle, a silent hunter in a world where the best camouflage is to simply not exist. The glass squid hovers nearby, another translucent marvel of the Hadal Zone. Its body is a fragile, clear balloon, perfectly hidden from any predator's gaze. However, its eyes and digestive gland are opaque, casting a dark shadow that would betray its location. To solve this, the squid uses bioluminescent organs on its underside to produce a soft, rhythmic glow that matches the faint light from above. This counter-illumination erases its own shadow, rendering it invisible to any hunter looking up from the depths. It is a creature of light, used for the purpose of disappearance, a rhythmic trickster in the permanent night of the abyss. As we lower the submersible closer to the pale silt, we see the scavengers of the deep, the supergiant amphipods. On the surface, these creatures are the size of a fingernail, but here, through a mystery known as deep-sea gigantism, they have grown to the size of a human hand. They are pale, armored, and look like massive, white sandhoppers, their many legs moving with a slow, rhythmic scuttle across the mud. They are the cleanup crew of the trench, sifting through the silt for the rare, nutrient-rich flakes of marine snow. Their metabolism is so slow that a single meal can sustain them for months in the cold dark. Scattered across the floor of the Challenger Deep are thousands of xenophyophores, giant, single-celled organisms that resemble lumpy, pale sponges. Despite their complex, flower-like appearance, each is a single, sprawling bag of protoplasm, the largest of its kind on Earth. They are the microscopic masons of the deep, sifting rhythmically through the mud to collect grains of sand and mineral flakes, which they glue together into intricate, branching shells. These structures provide a rhythmic architecture to the flat silt, creating tiny reefs where even smaller life forms can find shelter from the crushing currents. They are the silent, single-celled builders of the underworld. The deep is also a theater of hypnotic lures where the anglerfish hangs motionless in the dark. It is a globular, charcoal-black creature with needle-sharp teeth that curve inward like the bars of a cage. From its snout grows a long, fleshy filament, at the end of which a blue, rhythmic pulse of light flickers like a dying star. This light is produced by symbiotic bacteria, a living lantern that attracts curious prey in a world of absolute scarcity. The anglerfish does not hunt. It waits, its body a dark, rhythmic presence at the edge of the light, its entire existence a lesson in the power of patience. Nearby, the dragonfish uses a different, more technological kind of light. Beneath its eyes are two specialized organs that glow with a deep, rhythmic red, a color that almost no other creature in the deep can see. Most deep-sea eyes are tuned only to the blue part of the spectrum, leaving them blind to the dragonfish's searchlights. The predator moves through the dark like a sniper, its red beams illuminating its prey while the dragonfish itself remains a shadow in the black. It is a rhythmic, invisible hunter, using a private frequency of light to master a world where vision is a luxury few can afford. The floor of the trench is a vast cream-colored desert, but it is not empty. Every few meters, we see the rhythmic trails of sea cucumbers, their soft, tube-like bodies plowing slowly through the mud. They ingest the silt, sifting it for the organic remnants of the marine snow before excreting the clean sand behind them. They are the rhythmic gardeners of the Hadal Zone, constantly recycling the seafloor in a process that takes decades to cover a single acre. Their movement is so slow, it is almost imperceptible, a quiet, rhythmic labor that sustains the delicate chemical balance of the deep mud. The marine snow continues to fall around us, a silent, rhythmic blizzard of white flakes that has been descending for weeks. Each particle is a fragment of a world we have left behind, a scale from a tuna, a shell from a plankton, a grain of dust from a distant continent. By the time it reaches us, 7 miles down, it is a nutrient-poor shadow of its former self. Yet it is the foundation of everything we see. The ghosts of the Hadal Zone are built from these crumbs, their bodies a testament to the ability of life to survive on the very edge of nothingness. We pull our lights back, and the ghostly snailfish vanishes into the blackness with a final, rhythmic flick of its tail. The transparent octopus and the glass squid remain as invisible sentinels in the dark, their fragile bodies holding the weight of the entire ocean. We have seen the biological marvels of the deepest trench, the creatures that have turned pressure into a home and darkness into a shield. But as we move forward, we begin to see the shadows of a different kind of presence, one that does not belong in the ancient silence of the silt. As we prepare for the next chapter, the cone of our light catches a glint of something hard, angular, and unnatural in the mud. The ghostly biology of the trench is no longer the only story. There is a human shadow stretching down into the abyss, carrying with it the secrets and the waste of the surface. We turn our submersible toward these strange industrial relics, ready to explore the hidden impact of humanity on the world's deepest scar. The descent continues, a slow and rhythmic journey through the mystery toward the dark artifacts of our own history. Chapter 9: The Human Shadow in the Deep. Beyond the natural wonders of the abyss lies a quieter, more unsettling reality. In this chapter, we explore how the deepest place on Earth has become a silent repository for human history, from the discarded remnants of the Cold War to the drifting waste of our modern lives. The light of our submersible drifts away from the gelatinous grace of the snailfish, turning instead toward a rhythmic glint in the pale mud. At first, it looks like a natural crystal, perhaps a shard of volcanic glass or a rare mineral deposit. But as we move closer, the light reveals an angular, unmistakable shape, a rusted steel drum, its surface buckled and warped by the immense weight of the water. This is a relic of an era when the ocean was treated as a near-infinite void, a place where the logic of out of sight, out of mind, led us to drop our most dangerous secrets into the dark. We watch as a small amphipod scuttles across the corroded lid, a tiny resident of a new industrial landscape. A few meters away, we find the most haunting of all human artifacts, a single white plastic bag resting motionless on the cream-colored silt. It has no rhythm, no pulse, and no place in this ancient biology, yet it sits there as an immortal signature of the world 7 miles above. It likely drifted downward for weeks, a slow-motion ghost passing through the midnight zone until it settled in a place that has remained unchanged for eons. The bag is a silent witness to a humanity that reached the absolute bottom with its trash long before it arrived with its curiosity. We watch it shimmer in our floodlights, a synthetic intruder in the world's deepest sanctuary. As we pan our cameras across the wider floor of the trench, we see the thin black lines of abandoned deep-sea cables snaking through the mud, These are the forgotten nerves of the Cold War, part of secret passive sonar arrays designed to listen for the rhythmic churning of rival submarines. In the 1960s, these cables were a high-stakes bridge between the surface and the abyss, carrying the whispered data of global conflict through the crushing dark. Now, they are silent, encrusted with a fine layer of mineral dust and marine snow. They are the artifacts of a human tension that once saw the trench as a strategic cellar, a place where the deepest secrets could be safely buried. Near a cluster of weathered rocks, we observe a series of strange, metallic cylinders, partially buried in the silt. These are suspected to be discarded scientific instruments, or perhaps the remains of scuttled military equipment, dropped here because the trench offered the ultimate security. At 11,000 meters, no diver could reach them, and no conventional submarine could recover them. They have become a permanent part of the trench's geology, their titanium hulls slowly becoming home to colonies of microscopic bacteria. The silence surrounding these objects is heavy, a rhythmic reminder of a time when the deep ocean was the planet's final, dark hiding place for the things we feared. The impact of humanity is not just visible in the objects we find, but in the very chemistry of the life that lives here. Scientists have discovered that the supergiant amphipods, those hand-sized scavengers of the mud, carry within their tissues high concentrations of industrial chemicals like PCBs and mercury. These toxins have drifted down from the surface world, hitching a ride on the marine snow and entering the slow, patient food web of the abyss. We watch a pale amphipod sift through the mud, unaware that its glass-like body has become a vessel for the chemical ghosts of an industrial age. The trench is not a separate world. It is the ultimate destination for the world's poisons. The gaze of the surface world is shifting now, from using the trench as a dump to seeing it as a treasure chest. We turn our submersible toward a field of hydrothermal chimneys, their surfaces rich in cobalt, copper, and rare earth minerals. These are the same minerals that power our smartphones and electric cars, and they have triggered a quiet, high-stakes gold rush in the deep. We imagine the arrival of the first mining robots, massive, multi-ton grinders that will one day crawl across this landscape in the dark. The thought of these machines brings a rhythmic, metallic noise to our minds, a sharp contrast to the soft, ancient silence of the vents. We see a prototype of one of these mining crawlers in our imagination, its giant treads stirring up a massive, rhythmic cloud of silt as it moves. In the shallow waters, such a cloud would dissipate. But here, in the still, heavy water of the trench, the sediment can hang in the air for miles. This mining plume is a gray, suffocating shadow that threatens to bury the very ecosystems we have only just begun to understand. The giant tube worms and the blind crabs would be lost under a rhythmic rain of industrial dust, their chemical oases extinguished by the search for the materials of our next technological leap. The legal reality of the trench is a complex, rhythmic struggle between protection and profit. Much of the Mariana Trench is designated as a marine national monument, a sanctuary intended to preserve the abyss from human interference. We look at the digital maps of the monument, the lines drawn in straight, clinical paths across the blue. But these lines have no physical presence in the dark. There are no fences or rangers at 7 miles deep. The protection is a rhythmic promise made on the surface, a statement of intent that faces a difficult reality in a world where the borders are invisible and the enforcement is almost impossible. Beyond the protected zones lie the international waters, governed by the International Seabed Authority. Here, the rules are being written even as we speak, a rhythmic debate, over how to balance the needs of a mineral-hungry world with the preservation of a unique biosphere. We watch a small, autonomous drone drift past our submersible, its lights scanning the mineral chimneys for a future claim. It is a quiet, mechanical presence that signals the beginning of a new era. The trench is no longer just a mystery to be explored. It is a resource to be managed, a rhythmic shift in our relationship with the deep. In a quiet corner of the trench, we find a cluster of old, lead-weighted barrels that were dropped here in the 1950s. They are covered in a thick, velvety layer of marine snow, their original purpose long since forgotten by the world above. They sit in the pale mud like silent, rusted monuments to our own history of forgetting. The trench has a rhythmic way of absorbing our mistakes, holding them in its cold, pressurized embrace for centuries. We realize that the history of the Mariana Trench is now inextricably linked to our own, a dark mirror reflecting the growth and the waste of our civilization. As we pull our submersible away from these human artifacts, the darkness returns to its ancient, undisturbed state. The rusted barrels and the plastic bag fade into the blackness, leaving the snailfish and the amphipods to their slow, patient lives. We have seen the shadow of humanity in the deep, a rhythmic intrusion that has reached the furthest edge of our world. But even as we acknowledge our impact, we must also look toward the future of exploration. The secrets we have left in the trench may one day be the keys to understanding our own survival, or the warnings we failed to heed. The journey through the human shadow reaches its conclusion, and the air feels somber and reflective. We have seen the rusted secrets of the Cold War and the drifting ghosts of our modern consumption, and now we prepare for the final ascent. The descent into the trench has taught us about our world, but it also points toward the stars. The deepest place on Earth is the final frontier before we look toward the icy oceans of other worlds. We turn our lights toward the horizon, ready to move forward through the mystery, toward the final chapter of our descent. Chapter 10, The Abyss Beyond Earth. As we prepare to leave the deepest mud of our own world, we realize that the Mariana Trench is not an end, but a beginning. It is the practice ground for our next great leap, a liquid gateway to the dark oceans hidden beneath the ice of distant moons. We have spent hours in the crushing, silent dark of our own planet, but as we begin our final, slow ascent toward the surface, we carry the secrets of the Hadal Zone with us. The deep, rhythmic thrumming of the trench begins to fade, and the pressure on our hull slowly lightens, yet our minds remain fixed on the mysteries we found in the silt. We realize that the Mariana Trench is more than a geological feature. It is a biological and chemical template for the universe. Far above the research ship, beyond the atmosphere and the pale glow of the moon, lie the icy shells of Europa and Enceladus, moons that hide oceans deeper and older than our own. We are no longer just exploring Earth. We are learning how to search for life in the cosmic dark. Imagine a small, autonomous probe, a descendant of our deep-sea robots, arriving at the surface of Jupiter's moon, Europa. The landscape is a jagged, rhythmic nightmare of frozen methane and water ice, glowing with a faint, radioactive blue under the immense weight of the gas giant. There is no air here, only a profound crystalline silence that mirrors the stillness of the Challenger Deep. The probe deploys a melt probe, a slender, heated cylinder that begins to sink slowly through the miles-thick ice shell. The sound of the ice cracking and melting is a rhythmic, high-pitched hiss that echoes through the frozen crust, a mechanical pioneer searching for a liquid world hidden beneath the frost. After days of rhythmic melting, the probe finally breaks through the ceiling of a hidden global ocean. It emerges into a world of absolute, unyielding blackness, a place that has never known the light of any sun. The water here is cold and heavy, a liquid atmosphere that exerts a pressure as immense and architectural as that of the Mariana Trench. The probe releases a swarm of soft-bodied biomimetic robots, tiny, translucent flyers designed after the Mariana snailfish. They drift into the dark, their internal lights casting a rhythmic blue glow across a seafloor of ancient silicate rock. This is the new frontier, a Hadal Zone on another world, where the rules of life remain a dark, tantalizing mystery. These robotic swarms move with a fluid, rhythmic grace, their AI-driven minds making decisions in the total absence of human control. They do not fight the alien pressure. They are built of soft polymers and fluid-filled sensors that move in perfect equilibrium with the crushing water. One robot detects a faint chemical signature, a rhythmic pulse of heat and sulfur rising from the rocky floor. It follows the scent, its thrusters producing a soft, rhythmic whir that is lost in the deep silence of the moon's interior. It is searching for the chemical hearths we found on Earth, the hydrothermal vents that may be the universal engine of life. The robot arrives at the edge of a vast field of black smokers, their mineral chimneys erupting with superheated, mineral-rich fluid in a rhythmic, volcanic dance. This is the Europa vent, a place where the moon's internal heat, generated by the rhythmic tug-of-war with Jupiter, meets the cold, dark ocean. The robot's cameras scan the chimneys, searching for the telltale signs of chemosynthesis, white mats of bacteria, blind, scuttling crustaceans, or perhaps something entirely new. In this dark, alien cathedral, we realize that the black smokers of the Mariana Trench were our classroom, teaching us that life can bloom in the toxic fire, even 700 million miles from the sun. We watch as a translucent eel-like creature glides past the robotic probe, its body a ghostly rhythmic undulation that mimics the glass squid of our own abyss. It has no eyes, for there is no light to see, but its skin is covered in sensitive, rhythmic receptors that can feel the vibrations of the water. This is the biological mirror. Life on Europa, if it exists, would likely face the same structural and chemical challenges as the life in our trench. It would be soft, slow, and chemically fueled, a phantom of the pressure that exists in a state of quiet, crystalline permanence. The Mariana Trench was not an anomaly. It was a preview of the cosmic norm. The sounds of this alien ocean are captured by the robot's hydrophones. The rhythmic groaning of the ice shell miles above, the hiss of the vents, and the tectonic rumbles of a moon being pulled by gravity. We listen to these recordings back on Earth, the sounds reaching us across the void of space like a long-distance echo. They are the same rhythmic frequencies we recorded in the Mariana Trench, a universal music of water and rock. The mystery of the Biotwang, or the unknown metallic clanks on Earth, suddenly feels less like a local puzzle and more like a planetary dialect. The abyss, it seems, speaks a common language across the stars. The future of exploration will be a rhythmic, collaborative effort between human curiosity and robotic endurance. We will send our swarms to map the dark, to sift through the silt of alien oceans, and to listen for the voices of creatures that have never known the day. The Mariana Trench remains our laboratory, a place where we can test our machines and our theories before we launch them into the black. Every snailfish we film and every vent we map is a data point for the coming leap toward the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. We are practicing for the day we finally find another world that breathes in the dark. As our submersible finally approaches the surface of the Pacific, the dark indigo water begins to lighten, turning into a rich, welcoming turquoise. We see the first glints of sunlight filtering down from above, a rhythmic dancing of gold on the hull of our sphere. The pressure begins its final, gentle lift, and the architecture of the deep gives way to the freedom of the air. We break the surface, the bright, blinding brilliance of the 2026 afternoon flooding through the porthole. We have returned from the deepest place on Earth, but the image of the pale silt and the silent alien vents remains etched in our minds like a promise. The research ship Okeanos is waiting, its deck a rhythmic bustle of activity as the crew prepares to recover our vessel. We step out into the warm, salt-scented air, the weight of the ocean replaced by the lightness of the wind. We look out across the vast, blue horizon of the Pacific, knowing that beneath its surface lies a world that is still 95% unmapped. The Mariana Trench is still down there, silent, dark, and indifferent, holding its rusted barrels and its ghostly snailfish in a cold, eternal embrace. It is a place of profound and necessary mystery, a reminder that the world is still full of blank spaces waiting for a light to find them. The journey through the deepest trench reaches its final, quiet conclusion. We have seen the first human descents, the geological fires, the transparent ghosts, and the industrial shadows of our own history. We have seen how the abyss on Earth points the way toward the abyss beyond the stars. The ocean is not just a body of water. It is a repository of time, a library of echoes, and a blueprint for the search for life in the universe. We close our eyes now, the rhythmic sound of the waves on the hull becoming a slow, peaceful lullaby that carries us toward the surface of our own dreams. Thank you for joining me on this slow descent into the Mariana Trench. If you found peace in this journey through the dark and the mystery, I invite you to gently like this video and subscribe to our channel for more long-form explorations of the world's hidden places. I would love to hear in the comments what you imagined as we drifted through the Hadal Zone together. For now, let the pressure of the world lift and the silence of the deep bring you a profound and restful sleep. The lights are fading, the marine snow is falling, and the abyss is once again at rest. Safe travels and good night.